Right then, ladies and gentlemen, in this video I'm going to be talking about how powerful low-level adventurers are compared to the average commoner, soldier, and monster. It's important to note that your world is your own, so your own interpretation is perfectly valid, but I'm going to be going over what I think realistically these adventurers are capable of, and also in first edition there is a table that specifically stated the level of experience adventurers were at for each level, and it did state level 1 characters were already veterans. Now this makes sense when compared to commoners, however in 5th edition things have changed slightly, and while you can still go for the interpretation of them being veterans, I think it's much easier to imagine them as someone who has passed their training, and this is their first adventure. That's why they're level 1, because this is their first time going on an adventure. I'd compare it to someone with an engineering degree or apprenticeship going out into their field to get a career, versus a layman with no understanding or experience in engineering attempting to do the same thing. Your level 1 character has far more knowledge and experience of combat and adventuring than your average commoner. They are not just some random guy who picked up a sword and hoped for the best. You can have examples of level 1 adventurers who are not experienced but have been granted power by a powerful entity. A level 1 warlock fits this quite well, or you could even do a level 1 sorcerer who has awakened their magical powers. However, I'm mostly focusing on your fighters, wizards, rogues, and other classes that have trained to get where they are, rather than receiving a power boost, because, to be honest, even a level 1 warlock doesn't make too much sense, because you would imagine that the power some eldritch being can offer is going to be far beyond that of what a level 1 character can do, but obviously you need a game, you need to start somewhere, so it's the same as paladins. I think a level 1 paladin doesn't make a lot of sense. I honestly like to imagine that a paladin should start at level 3, but obviously that isn't balanced. Now, a level 1 wizard can already cast first level spells and cantrips. This is a feat 90% of commoners could only ever dream of. The wizard is probably the apprentice to a more experienced wizard, or has passed some kind of wizard academy. Now they can cast things like prestidigitation and mending as cantrips, or first level spells like comprehend languages, featherfall, disguise self, and charm person. Imagine these spells in an otherwise medieval village environment. You would probably be the most powerful person in that village and would be well known by everyone in it. In fact, if you're not the direct apprentice of a more powerful wizard in your area, then you might well be employed by the lord, the mayor of your village already, because just knowing first level spells is so useful and so powerful compared to what the average person can do, that you're going to be already in really high demand even as a level 1. A level 1 cleric is capable of healing word, which is more than potent enough to fully heal a commoner. Imagine for a moment you injure yourself on some farming equipment, and the cleric comes along and just says one word and boom, you're back to full health. Cure wounds, bless, sanctuary, shield of faith, these are all spells that could have a drastic improvement on the average person's lives. Imagine struggling to perform a task like fixing your farming equipment, and a cleric comes along and casts guidance on you, and all of a sudden you just get hit by a moment of inspiration and competency, and you're just better than you were 6 seconds ago. At least for a while anyway. A level 1 rogue is already a skilled thief, possibly an assassin, who works for an organization. This organization could be legal or illegal, and the rogue might be new to the order, but they've still passed the test to get into it in the first place. They're probably a little step above the average goon, for lack of a better word, as those would most likely be like common thugs and bandits. We could talk about every single class, but overall, a level 1 adventurer is someone who has passed their training, knows how to wield a weapon or cast basic spells, and is on a level slightly above the average town guard, bandit, hobgoblin, and whatnot. But this is their first actual adventure, like a soldier who has passed training and is going on their first tour. Still a giant step above the average commoner. Level 2, there's not a lot to talk about for level 2. A level 2 adventurer is almost virtually indistinguishable from a level 1. The main difference is now they've been out on an adventure and have faced danger firsthand. Here we get some survivorship bias, because those who made it to level 2 are the level 1 characters that didn't die, so they probably picked up a skill or two and have more practical experience with fighting monsters or exploring a dungeon, and might have a few scars to show for it, especially if they're a fighter. Now, level 3. This is where the adventurer steps into a league of their own. It is the level most classes get their subclass and become more unique and a lot more powerful. Casters can now cast 2nd level spells. Fighters and rogues have learned some new skills depending on their subclass, and probably gained some new equipment. By this point, you probably have some potions and slightly better armor. The fighter has progressed from chainmail to splint, and the rogue has progressed from leather armor to studded. At this point, you're on the level of a guard captain, or perhaps even a knight. You can handily deal with common bandits, goblins, and even hobgoblins. I like to imagine that you reach this level once you've defeated the first real threat to your village, like the goblin boss, the bandit captain, or the like. The main villain to your region is still at large, but you've now dealt a blow to them and your names are becoming known. At this level, a paladin actually becomes a paladin rather than an aspirant. A wizard steps outside of the teachings of their master and starts mastering schools of arcane of their own, and this is the limit for most mortals. Your typical guard or soldier or even magic caster rarely gets beyond this point. Most NPC magic users you might encounter in a city or town are probably around this level. Most experienced soldiers and captains are also about this level, as well as combat instructors. If you're a fighter, you've probably reached the same skill level as whoever trained you, and if you're a rogue, you probably have some level of respect within your organization now. Level 4 is almost indistinguishable from a level 3, but now you've gained a feat or ability score improvement, which I like to imagine is achieved by performing an actual feat that you are now known by. At this level in 1st edition, you are known as a hero, so you likely defeated the main bulk of the villain's forces, perhaps slaying their top lieutenant and routing their armies. You are stronger and more skilled than you were at level 3, and now you are ready to face the final villain in your local region, whether it's a hobgoblin warlord, an orc war chief, an evil necromancer, or even a young dragon. Most renowned knights are around this level. The fighter by this point might even be a knight with his own colours. I also reckon this is a good level for everyone to get their first proper magic item. The fighter and rogue can get a +1 weapon, the wizard gets a basic magic ring like a ring of protection, and now you have the wealth of a lesser noble at this point, able to buy potions and equipment without worrying too much about funds. At this level, the average commoner might be in awe of your presence. Imagine in real life if you're walking down the street and a relatively famous top-level UFC fighter walks by you, or a top-level football player. You are basically a local celebrity for your deeds at this point. And finally, level 5. Now you are true local heroes. You have slain the dragon, the necromancer, the orc war chief, and you have saved your local region from the villain. You return home hailed as heroes, and you probably have the best non-magical equipment money can buy, as well as more magical items. The fighter now has plate armor, the rogue has 2+1 weapons, the wizard has a proper magic staff of his own. You have surpassed your teachers before you. The wizard can now be a teacher at a wizard academy, or the head mage of your village or town. The rogue might lead their own branch of their organization and might have a title of their own. The fighter will have a title of their own as well, and if they've been knighted, they might have their own land and perhaps a fighter school of their own. You are well beyond the level most mortals will ever reach. In fact, in 1st edition it mentions that level 6 is the bare minimum for a level that is considered to be almost unachievable, so level 5 is basically the pinnacle for most adventurers. Your magic casters can now cast 3rd level spells, which are practically divine in their power compared to what the average commoner is used to. Imagine the effect you could have on your village if you could cast spells like Revivify if you're a cleric, or Remove Curse and Speak with Dead if you're a wizard. Imagine the destructive power of a fireball or lightning bolt compared to what an average guardsman or orc is capable of. Your wizard is no longer just a wizard. They are the wizard of your local region. They might even have their own tower. Now, you may be local heroes, but a greater threat to the kingdom has arisen. You cannot stay in your local area forever. You must eventually head out to face this greater evil, and only the most powerful and elite adventurers could possibly hope to succeed. As mentioned before, level 6 is nigh unachievable, but will you have what it takes to be one of the few to succeed? We'll go over that in the next video.